So to go back to what Professor Anton asked towards the beginning of his video, um, he sort of posed the question whether religious believers were mad, rather whether supernaturalist belief systems, as they're called, are somehow insane and represent a kind of disease of the mind that scientific rationalism needs to eradicate. I don't think Professor Anton was totally buying into this story, but he posed the question, and then I think he directed us more towards a question. How can we become attentive again to the cosmos, to the universe? How can we become attentive to what he called the vegetative and organismic transpiring of our lives, and kind of tune into that reality rather than being so utterly distracted by the technologically mediated environment, the second nature that we have built up around us. Not that it's all intrinsically evil or something. I use it all every day. But on some level, how much choice do I have but to use it? If I want to remain a member of human society, on some level I'm obligated to use these technologies, because that's where we're at today. But I think, as paradoxical as it may seem, I also feel compelled to critique these technologies, the impact of these technologies, at the very same time that I continue to use them. I can't escape that seeming contradiction, that paradox. I'm trying to, in doing this, intensify the contradictions of, I think, late capitalist society. And it's only by intensifying capitalism that we can hope to overcome it, to pass through it. So, or at least that's the wager that I am making. And so I want to use these mediums to tell a different kind of story, a story that would, I think, begin to help alleviate not a religious disease per se, but the disease of, I don't know what to call it. The words that are buzzing through my mind are like scientific materialism, or rationalism, or intellectualism, or this notion that the human mind is somehow above and beyond nature and can reach in and control and manipulate nature with complete precision and total control. That, I think, is a destructive story. Destructive not only of the human social fabric, of the psychological dimension of our individual lives, but it's also destructive of the entire Earth community, as I mentioned in my last video. So I agree with Corey that we need to return our attention to the vegetative and organismic transpiring of our lives, and to the atmosphere, the biosphere, the hydrosphere of the Earth. We need to return our attention to the seasonal rhythms of the sky, the way that the stars spiral overhead and trace meaning into our minds, or at least the very alphabetic languages that we today use to communicate and share information with one another through were taught to our ancestors, by the stars and planets overhead. where the fixed constellations were represented the consonants, and um, the wandering planets represented the vowels. The sky sung the alphabet to us, right? And we go about using it in a very instrumental, sort of mundane way without realizing the profundity of the technology that we're employing. So I think returning to the cosmos, remembering our being on the earth and being beneath the sky, wandering beyond the city walls to recover our sense of embeddedness within a cosmos. I think part of what it requires is discovering an authentic sense of ritual, which is at the core of authentic religion, right? So, are religious believers mad? Well, in many senses, I think yes. Modern religious fundamentalists are demonstrably insane on some level, as are modern scientific rationalists who are also, while they rail against traditional religion, perfectly willing to accept the religion of the marketplace, the theology of money. That's another form of insanity. Techno-industrial capitalism is clearly insane in that it systematically destroys the welfare of future generations in order to earn a profit in the present. So in this context, I think rather than try to cure ourselves of religion, we need to try to recover and remember a more authentic form of religion, or really of ritual. I want to read a page or two here from the psychoanalyst Erich Fromm's book, The Sane Society. He's associated with the Frankfurt School of Social Criticism, kind of inheriting Marx critically, throwing in a little inheriting Freud critically and throwing a little Marx for good measure. Fromm is a very interesting thinker who has this to say about ritual. He writes, "One cannot fully appreciate the nature of alienation without considering one specific aspect of modern life, its routinization, and the repression of the awareness of the basic problems of human existence. We touch here upon a universal problem of life. Man has to earn his daily bread, and this is always a more or less absorbing task. He has to take care of the many time and energy-consuming tasks of daily life, and he is enmeshed in a certain routine necessary for the fulfillment of these tasks. He builds a social order, conventions, habits, and ideas, which help him to perform what is necessary, and to live with his fellow man with a minimum of friction. It is characteristic of all culture that it builds a man-made, artificial world superimposed on the natural world in which man lives. But man can fulfill himself only if he remains in touch with the fundamental facts of his existence. If he can experience the exaltation of love and solidarity, as well as the tragic fact of his aloneness and of the fragmentary character of his existence. If he is completely enmeshed in the routine and in the artifacts of life, if he cannot see anything but the man-made, common-sense appearance of the world, he loses touch. He loses touch with. He loses touch with and grasp of himself and the world. We find in every culture the conflict between routine and the attempt to get back to the fundamental realities of existence. To help in this attempt has been one of the functions of art and of religion, even though religion itself has eventually become a new form of routine. Even the most primitive history of man shows us an attempt to get in touch with the essence of reality by artistic creation. Primitive man is not satisfied with the practical function of his tools and weapons, but strives to adorn and beautify them, transcending their utilitarian function. Aside from art, the most significant way of breaking through the surface of routine and of getting in touch with the ultimate realities of life is to be found in what may be called by the general term of ritual. I am referring here to ritual in the broad sense of the word, as we find it in the performance of a Greek drama, for instance, and not only to rituals in the narrower religious sense. What was the function of the Greek drama? Fundamental problems of human existence were presented in an artistic and dramatic form, and participating in the dramatic performance, the spectator, though not a spectator in our modern sense of the consumer, was carried away from the sphere of daily routine and brought in touch with himself as a human being, with the roots of his existence. He touched the ground with his feet, and in this process gained strength by which he was brought back to himself. Whether we think of the Greek drama, the medieval passion play, or an Indian dance, whether we think of Hindu, Jewish, or Christian religious rituals, we are dealing with various forms of dramatization of the fundamental problems of human existence, with an acting out of the very same problems which are thought out in philosophy and theology. So, what Fromm is saying here is that we need to rediscover ritualistic practices that draw us out of the routines of daily life, the world of work. And many scientific rationalists will refer to anything associated with religion, like ritual, as a kind of delusion. That they'll say you're deluded if you practice rituals. What do you think that they're gonna buy you something? Everything's interpreted in this logic, according to a logic of exchange for, the techno-capitalist rationalist mindset, right? So when they think about religion and ritual, they find no value in it. But I think, I would hope that there's a liturgical, ritualistic dimension, a performative dimension to philosophy, as much as to religion. That in some ways, the way that I try to find sanity in our world right now is through the practice of philosophy, and the practice of philosophy not just as something that I might sell in the marketplace for its commodity value, but something rather that I can't help but practice because on an existential level, on the level of my soul, there is nothing more important than the love of wisdom and freedom and beauty and truth. These are not ideas that we can easily package and exchange with one another. You can't encapsulate truth or beauty or goodness or love or freedom in a book that can be sold. That's not to say that these ideas can't be taught through a living personal relationship to a teacher, but they certainly can't be sold as a product. Books can help us in the context of a larger, paideia, a larger educational process, but um, there's something about philosophy and the way that I try to practice it that is liturgical, in the sense that it's a kind of, as I've described it in the past, a kind of prayer um, that allows me to find some relief from the world of work, of you know the waking egoic world of competitive atomized interaction. I think that world is clearly one aspect of what it means to be, an earthly creature, a biological organism, but it's not by any means the full picture. Um, I think to recognize the full picture, we need these sacred technologies, these ritualistic practices that traditionally religions have supplied us with. And perhaps the religions that we've come to know historically are now stale and we need something new. That may be. Um, I'm open to possibilities in that respect.